Hello, I'm Enzo, and today I'll be playing Oxygen Not Included Spaced Out. And in this video, I've been working on a crazy project. This is the regolith planet in the Spaced Out DLC. This planetoid is like the space biome in the regular game, but instead of having it on your main planetoid in Spaced Out, they have it on its own planetoid. And it's actually really neat, but meteor showers are incredibly annoying. However, that's the primary purpose of this planet, and that's what I'll be going over in this episode. In my world, my regolith planetoid actually spawned with one steam vent, and that gave me a crazy idea. I decided, what if I made one colony that sustained itself entirely upon one steam vent, and nothing else? No pips, no arbor trees, no polluted water, no natural gas, nothing. Just one steam vent. The rules are I can import materials from other planets, but those can't be used long term. They can only be used to build and set everything up. And this is what I came up with. It's a perfect rectangle, it has everything you need, and it's completely self-sustainable. It grows its own food, produces its own oxygen, and even has reed fiber for atmosuits. So how does it all work? Well, it's extremely complicated. First, I used a mod to actually calculate the average output of the geyser. It's incredibly useful, and I came up with 743. I don't know what it is on my main world, but I can scale this to whatever it has to be. Anyways, it starts off with the steam being taken from the steam room and actually being extracted using steam turbines, and I'm using radiant liquid pipes here made of thermium so that it can exchange as much heat as possible and actually cool it down in the process. These two steam turbines here are used to cool the steam room. This is where I keep all the electronics and all the cooling equipment. Now, the steam vent only erupts every half a cycle, so I have to wait a bit, but as you can see, once it starts erupting, the water is taken out, it's put through these pipes, and it goes into this giant storage system. Just a bunch of tanks that flow into each other that all store up water. Now, the liquid bridges are a little confusing, yes, but that's because of the limited space. What I did here, I have two liquid valves. The first one restricts the flow rate to 740 grams a second. I didn't want to do 743 just so we can save up a tiny bit every single time. The second one is more interesting. How this works is it only takes 575 grams, leaving you with 165. The 575 go into this very interesting electrolyzer setup. This is split into two rooms, hydrogen and oxygen. This is known as a hydra, or a submerged electrolyzer. Pretty much, it's kind of buggy, but it works. It splits oxygen into one room and hydrogen into the other. I have atmos sensors here telling these to take out the gases when there's enough, or pause this when there's too much. And in this process, I actually learned that the electrolyzer is flexible. It doesn't need 1,000 grams of water a second. It can actually produce different amounts of oxygen and hydrogen based on how much water it receives, which is really cool. Back to this. Because if we have 740, if it only takes out 575, we're actually left with 165. The rest of that goes into our base. While I'm here, I'll also go over the cooling loops. Now, this cooling loop could easily be run through the base to cool the base. Instead, I prefer to cool the oxygen first. I just wanted to try it, and it actually works amazingly. I cool it to about 80 degrees just to keep all the plants warm enough to actually keep living. And this one, I set it to around 70 degrees so that I can keep the water at a decent temperature instead of, 200 degrees or 50 degrees or something crazy. I also have a thermal regulator in here. This cools gas instead of liquid, and it's actually used to cool down the refrigerator or deep freezer, whatever you want to call it. The base. It took me a long time to design this base, and my goal here is to try and just cram everything into as small of a space as possible. And I did a pretty good job. Let's start with the liquids. As you can see, this is our 165 grams of water. That's a very specific number, and you're probably wondering why. Well, it's because each plant, we're using bristle blossoms as our plant. I had originally planned to use sleet wheat, but cooling that was going to be an issue, and I completely forgot you need dirt for it, so I didn't want to have to go through extra work to actually find dirt. How liquid valves work, or anything with an input or a bridge like this works, is it'll first take water into the input, meaning that this will take 30 grams out first, and then what's ever left actually goes to the plants. I use this system for a crazy amount of my builds, and it's incredibly useful to know. Anyways, this takes out 30 grams water a second, and it goes to the plumbing. I'll explain that later. The rest is split between these plants. And I could do some crazy math and have just barely enough for the plants, but I want to give the plants plenty of water in case something happens to our supply. Anyways, each plant requires 33.3, and the 3 goes on for a long time after that. I just round it to 3-4 grams of water a second. You're probably wondering why I used a wall toilet. That has to do with the ratio of water to polluted water it produces. As you can see, this takes 2,500 grams and produces 9.2 kilograms of polluted water. However, the lavatory actually takes 5 grams and produces 11.7 kilograms. Yeah, that's not a great ratio, especially considering we're trying to save water here. So I decided to go with the wall toilet, but the downside to the wall toilet is it kind of plops the water out on the other side of the wall. There's a simple solution to that. Thank you, Nicola. Very convenient. I just put a mini liquid pump, extremely convenient, and I filled the atmosphere up with hydrogen. Now you can use oxygen, or you can just let it off gas, but I prefer to try and save water. And although it does make bubbles when it consumes it all, it doesn't actually off gas. It's kind of weird, but very interesting at the same time. This water then goes to a thimbleweed. Now the thimbleweed won't grow most of the time just because it doesn't have enough water, but according to my calculations, you will get plenty of reed fiber. Assuming your duplicants use atmosuits at 10% a cycle, which is what they normally use, then it should take about 10 cycles for an atmosuit to break. I forgot the exact math on this because it's really complicated, but you should get enough thimbleweed over time. If not, I can just import like 1 to 200 and be good for a long time. Now, unlike the toilet, the sink doesn't give us more polluted water than water. It just 5 kilograms of water, 5 kilograms of polluted water. It makes sense if you think about it, and it just goes into the thimbleweed anyways. I didn't want to have to use sand or to have to boil the water or something crazy. I just wanted to get rid of the polluted water, and the thimbleweed does it all. You also might have noticed that I have a light switch in here. Well, not a light switch, but duplicant motion sensor, ceiling light. This just makes them work faster. I also thought it'd just be a nice touch for the bathroom. This basically only turns on when the duplicant's in range, or in the bathroom. The other reason I did it like this is because it actually saves a lot of heat. These light bulbs actually make the place really toasty over time. This is a great example. Now let's focus on the kitchen. It's kind of complicated, but it's not that difficult if you really look at it. I have 2 conveyor loaders and 2 auto sweepers. This auto sweeper, it's really the only one you need. This one here collects the gristleberry and puts it into the system. You have to have some way to, put your made food back into the storage. This takes food out of storage and puts it into a refrigerator. Now, I have this powered because it heats up like crazy if you don't have it powered, because the game doesn't like you abusing refrigerators. And it's a little buggy otherwise, so yeah. I also keep it at 1 kilogram so that you have just barely enough food. Now, I don't think it's time for them to eat yet, but they'll take out just barely enough that they need, and yeah, it works. It's amazing. I also have another ceiling light system here. This is so that whoever's cooking, I believe it's Pay that cooks, can actually work faster, because light gives duplicants a 15% work bonus. That's why I have it pretty much everywhere. This is our recreation room. It's a little sad, I know, but phones are extremely efficient, especially if you have duplicants on other planets they can talk to. That would give them a crazy bonus of 4 morale. So, pretty cool. The Great Hall. The Great Hall is nothing special, same light system, crazy amount of decor. I also love to use carpeted tiles because it gives a 15% stress reduction. Let's see. Yep. I mean, I think this world, yeah, it's set to no stress because it's a testing world, but still, incredibly good to use. You can also use diamond tiles, but that kind of just overloads their decor, and these give stress reduction instead, so that's what I prefer. We have a water cooler in here. Now, you can use phones or a jukebox or whatever else you want as a recreation item, but I prefer the water cooler just because once you disable it, it doesn't take water and it counts as a recreation building. Unfortunately, there are no other duplicates that Nicola can talk to, so they get 1 morale, but it's still fine. Alright, as you can see, they just barely take enough food, it gets replaced, Pay eats, and yeah, that's it. I might also considering importing some table salt from my main planetoid in my main playthrough. Let's get to the bedrooms. I decided to go with the full-blown bedrooms instead of barracks. You don't have to do this, it's only 1 more morale, but it's a lot more work. I just like it. I mean, it fits the space perfectly. Why not? You might also wonder why I designed the building like this. How there's a tile of granite, in front of the insulated tiles. That just has to do with decor. This takes away 5 decor, but this adds 6 if you have, well, granite or sandstone. So just a small bonus I decided to use. And the last part of our base. These are the Atmosuit docks. Now, the ventilation's a little complicated. This system, it's the same piping system, so it wants to go here to the other side first, and whatever is left can actually go onto the pipe where we can use it for something else. You guys will see that later. The rest of it first goes into Atmosuit docks. There's one line that prioritizes the first one because this is going to be the most used one, and they kind of get dispersed around the others. After that, they go into the vents to actually fill the rest of the place with oxygen. This. Yeah, I know people don't like this, and it's a little bit of a crime, but this is a energyless, heatless pump system. When it detects carbon dioxide, it'll activate the pump. What then happens is crazy physics. This will always have carbon dioxide in it. I set it to 1 gram, that's just the easiest way to do it, and it will infinitely cycle. It acts as a filter because this checks and it tries to put gas on this line. It can't if it's not carbon dioxide. If it's not carbon dioxide, it'll just go over and flow back into the room. If it is carbon dioxide, I don't know if I'll get an example, but it'll overflow, go into this line, and out into space. I also have an exosuit forge. I dare not touch it because this crashes my game in debug for some reason. It's really weird. If a duplicate has an accident while they're out, well, this is where all the fluid gets emptied. This mini liquid pump goes right into the thimble reed as well. I mean, there's nothing else I can really do with it. And you'll notice I have 5 docks, yet 3 beds and 3 suits. This is just in case I need to host another duplicate for a small amount of time while they're here. You can also repurpose this and a small bit of this room to make new bedrooms, or just a big barracks. So that's the main part of the base, and what I truly wanted to show off. There's a crazy amount of complicated math I did to make all of this work, so I'm excited with how it turned out. Besides that, in this world, we have these. You might have noticed we actually have no batteries in here. The reason these batteries are so amazing is because they leak a very small amount of power, but the big thing is they don't produce heat. Heat is usually the killer with batteries, meaning you have to keep them cooled or put them in a steam room. That's why this is such an amazing system. And they can hold 100 kilojoules per battery. That's crazy. That's literally about 2.5 of these normal jumbo batteries. It's kind of crazy. Now, I know the base was probably the most exciting part, but I do have to go over the fact this is still the regolith planet. There are meteor showers, and we have to protect against that. So, unfortunately in debug mode, I haven't gotten a meteor shower so far, so we kind of have to simulate one. First, I'll pretend that these space scanners detected a meteor shower. Now, I have a huge network like this so that they can all scan and have a higher chance of closing the doors before meteor showers happen. And once they're closed, well, we have to do some stuff here. I already have a comet selected. There are all types of comets that come down. I'm not actually sure if we get the special ones like defunct. Yeah, I'm not sure we get all of these, but rock comets are the most common. These are the ones that ruin your day. Yeah, it's these that break everything, leave carbon dioxide everywhere, and spawn regolith. Alright. So normally people would actually just put the bunker doors like right there. Issue with that is you only get a little bit of regolith. My plan here is to try and store up as much regolith as possible. You could even make this lower if you wanted, but that's not my style. Anyways, once the meteor shower's over and the space scanners detect that, they open the doors back up. This is your standard C miner setup, so it mines just perfectly the one in front of it and below it. I have it this high up. I think you can go like 2 more blocks, but I forgot, and that's how it turned out. They entomb all of these auto sweepers. These you have to make out of thermium if you're building it like this. They pretty much self-cool over time because if they get too hot, the 600-degree regolith will cool it down. And once they're all uncovered, they'll start working. Slowly. The whole idea here is that these auto sweepers pick up regolith from their side, place it onto the automatic sweeper, but can't pick it back up here. And it creates a chain where it dumps all the regolith to the left side. Come on. While that's going, I should also show off my solar panels. It's nighttime, unfortunately, but this is the most optimized setup I could find, where it's overlapping just 3. Normally, I would have it overlap 4, so you could have 4 or 5 blocks, depending on your sunlight, but this is the most efficient setup I found for this space. I have 5 high and, yeah, the 3 overlap most of the time. Some, it's a little weird, like 4 overlap here. That's just because I was trying to get these together, because they go underneath by 4. Anyways, it's nighttime, meaning we don't generate power. These batteries still act as amazing backup. I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure if there's like a deb generator somewhere, but I don't think there is. Anyways, this is our cooling system. It's cooling system. It takes the regolith and cools it. Pretty simple. In this room, I also decided you can put batteries if you wanted. Not necessary, but extra power storage if these weren't overkill enough. Here's when I'm going to get to the complicated parts of this world. If you're asking, the other parts aren't actually that complicated. This is what's difficult. This is what took me hours to figure out. Nothing else on this planetoid is that difficult. But this. I know it looks really complicated, so I kind of broke it down into smaller segments here. This is a crazy amount of automation. But let's first start with this room. This room is kind of backup. So we don't have regolith on the lines here, because the main goal of this planet is actually to collect as much regolith and send it back to the main planetoid as possible, either for melting to use with power or to use as a filtration medium. The issue is, when the rocket launches, this place becomes superheated, and I don't want the regolith to melt on these lines. So I decided to make a backup system. If it can't fit the regolith onto these lines, it'll just dump it, using the same conveyor bridge or whatever bridge system you want. It takes it, tries to go through the bridge first, and then dumps it. This tries to put it on the bridge. If there's something here already, it can't actually go onto the bridge. Pretty neat system. Just auto sweeper, the deb generator. Oh, that's probably what's giving me all the power. I can just go ahead and destroy that. We might see a power drop, potentially. There still could be another deb generator, or we just generate that much power and don't use that much. Alright, anyways, yeah, this will pick it up, put it on the line. Now, this is our rocket. I'll explain a little bit more about the fuel later, but let's look at the cargo bays. I set it up to have 3 large cargo bays. Now, there's no furniture or anything in there, there's no duplicates, nothing yet. This is just a debug rocket, so we can send stuff. I won't yet, but it's kind of for an example. So, you have 3 bays that can store 27,000 kilograms. How are you supposed to do that? Well, you could just let it run, then you could plumb the pipes if you wanted to get the rest off. But I thought, no, that's a lot of work, and I want this planet to be 0 maintenance. I want the duplicates to do everything themselves. I'll have to reset things occasionally, but that's just when I want rockets to launch and stuff. Anyways, this is what I came up with. It's a little complicated, but I can explain it. Let's see. Let's first start off by connecting our lines. I'll have this go just straight to the rocket itself. Actually, no. Instead of sending it to the rocket, I need to do a test example. This is a conveyor meter, one of my favorite new buildings. All the meters are incredibly useful. We're going to set this to just 10. It's not that important what number you put it to. When we load the rocket, we'll actually put to 500, but for now we're just testing it. What happens here is it detects that it sent 10 units, or one packet, then it stops. What happens once it stops, when this sends a green signal, it's extremely complicated. What happens is it sends a green signal to this counter first. It also sends a green signal to this XOR gate. It's incredibly important that you use an XOR gate instead of like an AND. The reason for this is this activates when only one is green. Now, you can't really see it because the XOR gate is over the filter, but this is the filter right here. This is the reset for it. When this gets reset, it resets the amount of units that it's detected that it's sent. I know I'm not that great at explaining. This is a filter gate. What happens is, once this is detected that only one is green, if they're both green, it won't go. If they're both red, it won't go. This just acts as kind of a timer. I don't know how to explain it. You have to have this in the system or else it'll break. Is pretty much all I can say. As you can see, I've set this to 0.5 seconds and it goes crazy. Anyways, after it's detected that, this is a counter, pretty much. Once this is counted to 9. Okay, I have to explain this as well. It's extremely complicated. Why wouldn't you just set to 10? That's hard to say. For what we desire, pretty much the goal is to fill up all 3 of these giant cargo bays, right? They can only hold 27,000 kilograms. But the meter can only read 500 kilograms. So, because you're going to have a counter here, this is kind of for the counter amounts of 10s that it's sent. I was thinking, well, doing 54 is impossible with just 10. So, the lowest number you can actually have for both these is 9 and 6. 9 times 6 is 54. This gives you 54 pretty much perfectly. Once this has reached 54, this then sends a signal. How does it send a signal, you may wonder, and what does it do? Well, this is what it does. Once it detects the signal, and it counts up, it has to output. But it also has to reset itself so it can count again. I have a line going just like this right here, so it both resets and activates the next one, so it can keep on going. And this one has the exact same system. It goes output reset, and also output go next. The reset here is just linked to a switch I can use to reset the system whenever I want. After this is counted 54 that we're looking for, it'll deactivate the system. But instead, I added one more counter. This last counter is what we use to count how many cargo bays we have. After that is done, and it's counted to 3, it sends a green signal. That deactivates the XOR gate. Whew, that was a complicated explanation, but I hope you guys at least kind of got it. This took me hours to figure out, so I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Anyways, after that, let's try something. Instead, let's go to the rocket this time. This is pretty much just the same system, but it's spread out. This is my first attempt at trying to make this. Now we can see it sends 20 kilogram packets because that's the limit of the rails, and it'll just fill up the rocket. We'll come back to this later because it's going to take a long time to fill. There are 2 more systems I wanted to show off in this world. I thought, since I produce so much oxygen and hydrogen, I have to do something with it, right? My whole plan was actually to fill up the rocket on this planet instead. And I did it, I guess. Alright, where do I begin? This is just your standard liquid oxygen and hydrogen setup. This is kind of how I like to build it. Let's see. I just realized the duplicant probably couldn't get up in there, but you can move things around, it's fine. I know it looks really complicated, but it's not. This is where you keep your steam turbines. I have just super coolant with background tiles. In here, I have 3 aqua tuners. One is for the oxygen, one for the hydrogen, and one just to cool the actual steam turbines. Steam turbines I set to 150 because they're not a huge priority and they won't produce a crazy amount of heat, but these numbers are usually pretty specific for me. Liquid oxygen and hydrogen have freezing points. Freezing is when they go into a solid. Evaporation is when they go back into the gas. Meaning, you don't want it to freeze, but you don't want it to evaporate. It's especially dangerous with liquid hydrogen, because you don't want it to break in the pipes, you don't want it to be too warm, but you don't want it to be too cold where it actually freezes back into a solid. So, very specific numbers. I've tested these work amazingly for me, so that's kind of just what I set. I usually go a little colder on liquid oxygen, but it doesn't have to make a crazy long journey. And I've actually set these pretty warm for my standards. It's just because what excess we don't use just gets dumped straight into space. Yep, we don't need it. I mean, I would love to recycle it, but it costs a lot of materials to make these pipes, and as you can see, it's pretty crowded already. The rooms are nothing special. Normally, they would just have pipes, atmos sensors. I like to put metal tiles at the bottom of my designs. That's usually just because it helps regulate the temperature of the liquid a little bit, and if it solidifies, it might have a chance to turn back into a liquid. The automation here is pretty simple. What this does is it pretty much tells if there's too much gas or if there's too much liquid, it'll shut these valves off, turning the gas flow off so that you don't overpressurize and break everything. Then the last thing I wanted to go over is kind of a precursor to our other system, our regolith counting system. Instead, this counts liquid. Now, on top of the crazy math I did for the water usage in the base, I did crazy math to figure out how much rocket fuel we would need. Rockets, considering I'm using liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, take up around 56.3 kilograms of hydrogen, which is the fuel, and 1/4 is oxygen. So that's around 14.075 kilograms. Extremely complicated, but good to know these numbers. You have to figure out how far you're going to go. That's for each tile. We are going to go 5 tiles to this planet, our main planetoid. But we also have to go 5 tiles back. And I'm going to have to disable the refueling on my main planetoid so that it doesn't mess with this rocket. Anyways, once it's completed that trip, it's used up 10 tiles of fuel. Alright, I'm sorry for all the math, but I really like this kind of stuff. So let me just get over a little explanation. Gotta do a quick... You have to flip the switch pretty quickly and it'll reset it. And it'll send liquid oxygen. Now, this thing's already full, so it doesn't matter. And it'll just vent it in space. We don't need it. And yeah, it'll refuel and everything. This one took me a long time to make. This was the precursor to the regolith system. And it's really complicated as well. But it's just like a baby version of the system. It only has one counter, so I had a slightly better time with it. Anyways, pretty much same system. Same XOR gate, XOR gate, however you want to say. We have a bridge here so that I can have a switch here that resets the whole thing. You could do it a number of other ways, but the reason I like doing it like this instead of resetting the meter at the same time is that your numbers sometimes get off, and that's hurt my brain quite a bit trying to build this, so let's just show it. Now, very specifically, this only counts 282. Seems a little weird. We need 4 times oxygen, right? That's only 2. Well, simple answer is you can't get 500. You can't get more than 500 kilograms on one of these. That's the most simple answer. Instead, I had to build this annoying system. Anyways, though. Oh, dang. That was quick. But yeah, so According to my calculations, this should pretty much be good for a rocket. Also, I realized I completely messed this up. My bad. Instead of it going onto this, it should go onto another bridge, because this tries to output. Otherwise, this rail wouldn't be working and it'd be sending it out and wasting more power. My bad. And the last major system I wanted to go over here is this. It looks a little weird, but this is just a giant cooling loop. Cooling is relative. It's extremely hot. Assuming you had meteor showers all the time, all of these auto miners would be going crazy and getting extremely hot. For this system, I generally just place a line of liquid. What I would normally do is put liquid bridges and then use my pliers to cut that segment off and then break it, and you get a little bit of petroleum. That's pretty much how the system works. We have 310 grams in each, that's just what stays there. You could also use visco gel, but that's a lot more expensive to produce, so this is the easiest way. You could also use supercoolant. I use supercoolant as this liquid just because on my main planetoid, I have a crazy ocean of supercoolant going, so kind of want to find ways to use it. I've also noticed this small robo miner here. This one only has one purpose. It's if this is covered by regolith, which it kind of is. I guess there's... Oh, that's copper, that's gonna melt. Yeah, everything here needs to be made out of steel. Well, bunker doors and tiles need to be made out of steel. Rocket can be made out of any metals, or what it requires. Besides that, I go thermium. Now, normally you'd go steel, but on my world, I'm running out of steel, and I have a crazy amount of thermium, so it's what you have at the time. You can also set up a automated collection system here, but I mean, I probably should. You'd have to run the rail all the way over there, and it's a lot of work. Maybe just keep it in case you need filtration medium for something. Instead of entombing the rocket and completely breaking it, what happens is the regolith just falls all the way down to the bottom, and that's why we have a robo miner here. Just in case. Once the supercoolant actually goes above 210 degrees, it'll boil the water, and once it goes above 250, the steam turbine will kick on and start cooling the place. The reason for this is just a giant cooling loop. This just takes heat out of it. Heat above 200 degrees. Normally you make the robo miners out of steel. I have plenty of thermium, so that's what I use. But that's pretty much how you cool space. These are interesting. The automatic dispensers don't overheat, so you don't have to worry about them. But the auto sweepers do overheat. That's why I make them out of thermium. You could do some other shenanigans, liquid. You could drop liquid onto it and cool it. No, that's too complicated. Just use thermium. It's the only real way to do this. I know the last part was extremely complicated, but I just want to show off all the incredible tech I built for this giant base. Well, giant's relative too. This is an extremely small planetoid. I just wanted to see if I can conquer it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to use whatever tech you need from this. I mean, I designed only a few of these, like these counters are what I designed. But I hope this helps someone out, and maybe you use this design to conquer your regolith planetoid. Thank you guys for watching, as always. And this is going to be Enzo from LookIntoGaming, signing out. Oh, it's done. Uh-oh. Well, it appears there's a miscalculation somewhere. That's what this was supposed to avoid. I'm pretty sure it had to do when we actually didn't have enough regolith, so I guess you could just have like a overflow system. Alright. Well, that pretty much sums it up. System that can almost perfectly put enough regolith in your rocket. It just requires a little bit of refining.